All right, so by now, I really hope that we worked out 6 because I accidentally ended our video instead of hitting pause. So we're at part 2 of the video, but it's the same lesson. So we know that our two sides that make up that right angle, that together where they connect form our right angle, squared is going to give us that hypotenuse, that side across from our right angle squared. So we know a squared, our legs squared, added together, their sum is going to be equal to that hypotenuse squared. We have one of our lengths, so 16 squared plus missing side squared is equal to hypotenuse squared. And I'm sure you all, so let's pull out our calculator and say, what is 16 times itself? 256. Plus our missing side length squared is going to be equal to 24 times itself. So 24 squared. So 576. And then we can go ahead and get rid of our addition with subtraction. So minus 256. Canceled on that left side. Minus 256. 6 minus 6 is 0, 7 minus 5 is 2, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So we know the square of our missing side length is 320. So we can go ahead and in our calculator say, well, first clear, 320. We want to know what the square root, this right here on your calculator is. And we have 17.88. We're going to round this 100th position. And 8 is 5 or more, so we're going to round it to 17.89. Square root of b squared. So what number times itself gives me b squared, and that's b. And we said it was 17.89 was the square root. Because with an equation, we know what we do to one side, we have to do to both. Did you get that right? Awesome. If you are still copying this, go ahead and pause this because in a second I'm going to erase it so it's not covering 7, 8, 9, and 10. Awesome. So go ahead and erase it. All right, so I'm going to do 7, 9 and have you pause it and do 8 and 10. So it tells us a rectangular pool at Andy's gym measures 25 meters by 50 meters. So what I like to do with word problems like this, so we can see our shape. So we have a rectangular pool. We know that it is going to be 25 meters by 50 meters. And they want to know how many meters would Andy need to swim in order to swim diagonally across the pool. So we know by definition of a rectangle that that's our right angle right there. So if you look, we have this is going to be our hypotenuse. That diagonal is our hypotenuse. So we can go ahead and say these are our legs. So our legs squared are the lengths they give us. So 25 squared plus 50 squared is going to give us that diagonal they're looking for squared. So we can go ahead and say, I believe we said it was 625. 25 squared. So yes, 625 because I hit it twice. So 625 plus 50 squared, well, 5 times 5 is 25 with 2 zeros is equal to our hypotenuse squared. And just so we can double check, but I know I'm right. 2,500 plus our 625 gives us 3125. So we have 3125 is equal to our hypotenuse squared. And we know our last step is to go ahead and take our square root of both sides. What number times itself gives me c squared? C times c gives me c squared. So that missing side length is equal to the square root of 3,125. So 3,125. Our square root of that, we are going to take it to the hundredths position. 1 is not 5 or more, so we're just going to leave it at 55.90, and we are going to leave our 0. So 55.90, so that we know there's more, and it's also more specific. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to 9 because I'm going to have you pause it and do 8 and 10 after we get one of each of these types of questions. But like I said, when they're describing it, I can see it more visually, so I like to draw it out. That probably will help a lot of you. But go ahead and pause this and copy this if you're doing it, because I wrote over our next question. Cool. All right. So what is the area of the largest square? So our largest square is our hypotenuse side. So we have A is 36 units squared, and A is 64 units squared. The area of a square is side squared. So the square root of this area would be our side. The square root of 36 is 6, so we know this side is 6. And we know the square root of 64 is 8, so this side is 8. Well, we know, and we're going to have to turn it back into squared anyways, but just in case we're looking, we know how to that this is the area. We're not trying to square the area. We know that our Pythagorean theorem is that side squared. So side squared plus side squared equals side squared. All right, and they already told us 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64. It's going to be equal to that third side length squared. All right, and 36 plus 64 is going to be 100, is equal to c squared. And then our last step we know is to go ahead and take our square root of both sides. What number times itself gives us 100? We should know that on our head is 10. It's equal to the square root of c squared to c. Did they ask us for the side length? No. Please pay attention to what they're asking you. So they're asking us for the area. So I know that last side length is 10. I already determined that the area of a square is side times side. So 10 squared is going to be 100. And they didn't give us anything but units. So 100 units squared is our answer. All right, so I want you to go ahead and pause this and go ahead and do 9 and 10. Or sorry, 8 and 10. All right, so by now you paused it. If you're not, go ahead and pause it because I'm going to go over them. So 8 tells us a pole vaulter rested a 17-foot pole against a wall. So here's our wall. And this is our lovely pole. So a pole vaulter rested a 17-foot pole against a wall. So this is our pole, is 17 feet. If the top of the pole hit the wall at 14 feet, so the top of this pole here, that tells me that this part of the wall is 14 feet. How far from the wall is the bottom of the pole? So what we are looking for is one of our legs. We're missing this leg. And again, you might not know it, but once you draw it out, I can see that the floor and the wall are going to be our right angle. So we know that we have our pole is our hypotenuse. We have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Our pole is going to be our hypotenuse, so 17 squared. Our wall is going to be one of our legs, 14 squared plus b squared equals c squared. Can you see that? We can kind of, when we draw it out, see our right triangle and that we are missing a side length and not a hypotenuse this time. All right, so let's go ahead and say what is 14 squared is 196. So 196, not squared, we already squared it. Whoops. Plus b squared is going to give us our 17 squared, so 289. And because we have a side length, instead of adding them together, we subtract. That's our one big difference. So minus 196. 9 minus 6 is 3. We have to borrow, so 18 minus 9 is 9. And that is 1. All right, so then we can go ahead and say this cancels, and we have b squared equals 93. But we want just the distance, not the distance squared. So we can go ahead and say 93. What's the square root of that? We're going to take it out to the 100th position. That 3 is not 5 or more, so we're going to leave that 4 a 4 and say that that side length is b equals 9.64. And make sure we include our feet. Perfect. Did you get that? If you didn't, did you make your pole a side length? Did you kind of see why it helps to draw it out? Awesome. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you pause this if you're checking your answers, you're copying it, whatever, because I wrote into 10. All right. So now we're going to go ahead. We're going to erase this, and we're going to scroll down. It says if the area of square 1 is 25 units. So again, this is going to be very similar to the other one, and the area of square 2 is 16 units squared. What is the perimeter of square 3? And pay attention, they said perimeter, not area. So we know perimeter is side plus side plus side plus side, and area is side squared. All right, so in order to find this side length, to do that, we have to go ahead and find out what a side squared, or what length the side is, if I can speak. So the square root is 16, because side squared, if we take the square root, we'll have one side, is 4, because 4 times 4 gives me 16. The square root of 25 is 5, so that's going to be that side length. So now I know that this is my hypotenuse. So a squared plus b squared equals RC squared. So we have one side, we're missing a side, and we have our hypotenuse. So I'm going to go ahead and say the side I do have plus the side I don't have. It's going to give me my hypotenuse squared. All right, so then I can go ahead and say 4 times 4 is 16, plus the side we don't have squared. It's going to be equal to 25. And now to go ahead and get rid of our addition, we're going to subtract 16 from both sides, and we're going to be left with 9. So b squared is equal to 9. And we're going to go ahead and take our square root of both sides. The square root of b squared is just b, and the square root of 9, what number times itself gives me 9? 3. So this side length is 3. It didn't ask us for an area, so we have to say 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12. And did I do that right? There's 4 sides of 3, 4 groups of 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So 12 units, not squared, because we're talking about perimeter. Our perimeter is 12 units. All right, so go ahead and fill in your summary of today's lesson. Basically, explain how to do our learning objective would be a good summary. So how do you do these things that we set out to learn? Our objective was that you know what the Pythagorean Theorem is. So in there, tell me what the Pythagorean Theorem is. Our objective was how to use the Pythagorean Theorem to find missing side lengths. So maybe explain the difference between having a missing leg and a missing hypotenuse. All right, so if you're still struggling, definitely please come to our guided practice. If you feel like maybe you got it, you can go ahead and get started on that Schoology assignment. Have a wonderful day, guys. I will see you at class. Bye.